Why is age fraud prevalent in Indian sports? Now, manipulation of date of birth by athletes in order to qualify for participation in junior competitions is the bane of Indian sports. The problem is spread across all sports and it happens with the blessings of parents, coaches, and school authorities. I'm Arup Ghosh from sports999.com, that is sports with a Z. Joining me on this podcast is a very special guest, Prajwal Hegde. Hi, Prajwal, can you hear me? How are you?
Hello. Hi, Arup. Happy to be here.
It's wonderful speaking with you. The last time we met was at the Sports Lit Fest, and so it's a delight. I'll just, for our listeners, give a short intro about you. So Prajwal has been working with the Times of India since 2005. She's TOI's tennis editor. She has reported on all the 4 Grand Slams, Australian Open, French Open, Wimbledon, and the US Open. And she's done that for a number of years. She's a member of the International Tennis Writers Association and also a part of the International Tennis Federation's Media Commission. Prajwal, the first, before I get into any specifics, with your experience, how prevalent is this malaise of age fraud? Because in cricket, it has happened pretty frequently. Now, cases are coming up in tennis. There are instances in Khelo India. But what is your broad perspective on this issue? How bad is it?
If I can go back in time and say when actually it is actually timeless in Indian tennis, it has been rampant for the longest of times. But around the 90s, Arup, it started coming out. It started becoming the talking point, not coming out. Everybody was talking about it. The players themselves were aware of players who were playing below their ages. And at about, I think, the turn of the millennium, this was addressed by the All India Tennis Association. And they took up 2 possible ways to try and stop this. One was the bone density test. Then that was ruled out because that had an error of, say, 6 months to 1 year. Right after that, they said age registration. So you were given a chance for a one-time registration, and which I think worked for a few years. And that's when I feel India had its best results in the juniors in a long time. Right after that, the AITA put the responsibility into state associations' hands, where the registration, the one-time registration, had to be done with the state association. And that's why this is so troubling, because it's now become a systemic thing. If age fraud is happening today, it is with the blessing of the system. And that's what's the most worrying thing for Indian tennis.
When you say that it is being done with the blessing of the system, so who gains out of it? Do the coaches gain out of it? Do the federation officials? There must be money involved too, and greedy parents?
See, if you look at what's happened with the Chandigarh Lawn Tennis Association or the Chandigarh Academy for Rural Tennis, which is at the heart of the problem right now, they have huge sponsorships. So to keep these sponsorships running over a period of time, they need to produce results. They need to have players at least playing junior Grand Slams, playing for India in Junior Davis Cup. You have to justify the kind of money into a system. And that's why it's become systemic.
Okay, let's go over the specifics of the Chandigarh case. Now, the facts that I have before me, and we have reported a bit also on it, talking to Vishal Pal. So it involves the story of a desperate father whose daughter was allegedly molested and by some fellow trainees, including a junior Davis Cup player at the Chandigarh Lawn Tennis Association complex. After that, the subsequent revelations on age fraud came out, and all of it was pursued by the father. And this poor guy, relentlessly, he traveled to Rohtak, Palwal, Hisar, reaching out to government schools where the accused had studied at the elementary level and dug up their original date of births. And after a couple of months, he had enough documents to make it clear that the CLTA trainees had fudged their age. Now, shouldn't that be done by cops or some other support agency instead of making a poor hapless father who's already mentally beleaguered, who's trying to cope with what is happening to his family, to the girl who has been harassed molested rather in this manner.
Yeah. Actually, Arup, if an association does that correctly, they don't need to go anywhere. If you do not have 20-year-olds parading as 15-year-olds, you stop the menace right there. The onus is on associations and indirectly on the All India Tennis Associations to enforce this.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. On the All India Tennis Associations to enforce this. This cannot be, we cannot park the bus, the buck stops with tennis. It stops with Indian tennis. A parent shouldn't be made to do this.
Yeah. I have some statements from the AITA Secretary General Hiranmoy Chatterjee, who said, we are aware of the matter. It's a concern that a Davis Cup player's name is involved. Is disgraceful. We've sought a report from the CLTA. Okay, now the ball gets tossed to the CLTA. The Secretary General, Sudhir Rajpal, he refused comments, saying the matter is sub judice, while its COO, Meghraj, did not respond to media calls or messages. And Chatterjee also said that the AITA will wait for the court to pronounce a judgment on age fraud before deciding its future course of action. Do you see ball tossing happening here?
Oh, 100%. 100%. Why are you allowed, firstly, if a child's age, if it is registered more than once, there is a problem. Why? I mean, which one is the right one? The first one, or is it the second one? And why is it being done? Why? Right. And you don't have to go to cops. You don't have to go anywhere. The father didn't have to run around to all these places trying to get the child's, the kids, not kids anymore, young adult certificates. That should be done by the association before admitting the trainees in.
And which is clearly not happening.
Yeah, clearly not happening.
So we have a brief interview from Vishal Pal, and he spoke to us. So he was the captain of the Indian team, which featured the accused player in one of the Junior Davis Cup editions. So his statement, and within quotes, he says there has to be a strong deterrent, which is the point you are also making. Then he goes on to say the AITA must make age verification test mandatory at the time of registration and for playing the nationals. The cost should be borne by the parents, and it's a one-off thing. And then he makes a strong point. There has to be stringent punishment. Just moving the category is not enough. What do you have to say on that?
Oh yeah, 100%. See, actually, Arup, it's not the child's fault. Okay, if the child is, if the age fudging is happening in the under 12 sections or the under 14 sections, the child doesn't know what is happening. It is the parent who is responsible. So at that stage, I'm not really sure if it is fair to push the child out of the race. I think it is okay to push the child into a higher age group and allow the child to compete. But they should not be, and the rule clearly says there is only a one-time registration for the AITA. Why are associations allowing more than one time? That is a problem that needs to be addressed. Tennis clearly did not want the bone density test, because they said there is a margin of error, which is fair. Okay, there may be a margin of error, but everything else, you have to adhere to it. Which is clearly not.
Yeah. You have hit on this point of the bone age determination test. Now, the sports bodies which favor them, so there is, ironically, they do not seem to face any inconvenience when certificates related to death, marriage, caste, income, school degrees required to be checked and are properly verified. But when this bone age determination tests, those reports are given, they are still being looked upon with suspicion. I'm told that there is a lot of money being made through this entire process. Is that true?
Yeah, of course. The economics is finally the end result of all things. You know, it is the carrot everybody is chasing. From the academies itself, which are being hugely funded, there is a reason to provide proof of performance for that. There is, in order to do that, you have to then fudge all these certificates. Again, you're feeding a system to allow this, to provide for that kind of talent, which is overage talent performing in an underage group. You don't see so much result. The saddest part in this whole process, Arup, is that real talent has been lost. The really good players, when they're constantly losing to someone who's much older than them, they lose interest. They go away. And if you look at junior Grand Slams in the last 10 years, our entry in that tournament is almost minuscule now. And that's largely because the age fraud is not by 6 months and 1 year, which is what parents were questioning about the bone density test. Or tennis itself was taking on about the age density test. The age fudging is 3-4 years. And that is a problem.
And with your experience, I would want to know also from your perspective that how does the tennis world in the West operate? What are the systems of checks and balances there which do not exist here? How do they protect young talent from not getting demoralized or being shafted in an irregular way?
Again, Arup, I'm sure this kind of thing happens in a lot of other countries. But in most places, you would think that your school certificate, that holds good. So that is what has got to be made mandatory here. And that is exactly what the AITA did at the turn of the millennium when saying one-time registration. It's just that we have the answer, we haven't stuck with it. Does it happen elsewhere? Oh, definitely. I'm pretty sure it happens across other countries. But
I read, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, tell me.
I read in this entire process while we were doing our research that acceptance of the original birth certificate, which is issued within 1 year of birth, needs to be adopted as a policy by sports bodies to stop this racketeering on indiscriminate bone age determination tests, because each test is up to 2,000 to 3,000 rupees per person. Yes. So that's like you indicated earlier, that's an industry in itself. But for our listeners, explain a little bit more about this entire process of not accepting the original birth certificate, number one. Number two, what are the flaws in the system there, and should it be made mandatory?
Arup, now suppose you are a kid playing tennis, okay? And you played for since you were, say, 5 or 6 years old. And by the time you're 12 or 13, you're looking good. So what happens then in the systemic age fudging is the association calls you up and then says, look, you're looking really good. So why don't you just get 2 years, 2 years minus from your age, and you can play the under 12 or you can play the under 10. And so then what happens is your school certificate is just pushed aside, and you are then playing with an affidavit or with a which is what it is exactly, is a second registration of the All India Tennis Association's registrar, which is then that if all records are maintained, there for all the age fudgers, there is usually 2 entries. Without a shadow of a doubt, nobody is fudging when they're 3 and 4 years old. And these kids are starting early. That is when it happens. And that is why it's systemic, because it does not come from the child. It rarely comes from the parents. It's almost always from the association. I mean, what happens if you fudge 2 years? That kind of thing. And if a child really has talent, I think parents would be tempted. It's economics. It takes care of a lot of things.
So during Khelo India Youth Games, there were numerous complaints of age fraud. A weightlifter whose real name has not been revealed, he came up with his Aadhaar card that declared him to be eligible for under 17 category. And the same person participated in another tournament a few months ago, which declared him above 17. And another incident came up in the same tournament when in registration line, around 5 to 6 boys and girls tried to use the Aadhaar trick and they got rejected. The main reason for such a fraud happening was that everyone's eye was on the scholarship, which was worth 5 lakhs. Now, if this is the intent is so public, then even Khelo India is missing a beat.
Exactly. I think it has to be blanket. And, Arup, this has to be, I think the Indian Olympic Association or, the parent body of sport in India has to take care of this. because every sport has this problem. And unless we address it, we are not going forward. Because when you fudge your age, you can win in the juniors, but you're not going to win much more than that. And again, I'm not talking about 6 months, 1 year. I'm talking about major fudging. It has to, and measures have to be stringent. Again, I say, I don't think you should push a child out of the sport. I don't think that's, I mean, especially in a culture like ours where, sport itself is not, a big, a huge priority. I think it would be unfair and it would do a disservice to sport as a whole to push a child out of the system. But I think parents and associations that do this should be dealt with severely.
Now, very interestingly, the person who's endorsing your point about not killing talent is none other than Vimal Kumar, former badminton India coach, who also coached Nehwal. Now, he makes a very interesting point, because there has been a lot of discussion about punishment for such frauds, and that you nail the coach, you even nail the parents, and why they're doing it, they're destroying the whole system and pushing this their son or daughter for greed. Now, Vimal Kumar makes a point that banning a player for 2 to 3 years is not right, because suspending them will kill a talent. So he's echoing exactly what you're saying. And in December last year, around 37 parents of budding shuttlers moved the Karnataka High Court to ask for a directive to BAI to implement a policy for detecting and eliminating age fraud from the sport. Now, has the court played any kind of major role in this, or is it not really on the radar?
I don't think it's really on the radar. You can get some kind of a judgment, but who's going to fight these cases, Arup, that can take years and that are going to keep coming up and keep coming? You can fight this ad nauseum, right? If you wanted to keep going at it, you can. So this has to go at the grassroots. This has to be stopped right at the start. There is no other way to do it.
Would you be aware of any representations being made to Kiran Rijiju, our sports minister?
I think the father of the CLTA, the father of the child, the CLTA, the CLTA case is doing it.
Now, go ahead.
And everywhere else, Arup, I think what has to be understood in this is not the parent's battle to fight. Because when a parent does it, the child is targeted. This is the battle of, you have to have a few good people in the system to engineer this. It cannot be done any other way. People who are properly, it can be done by former players. It can be, like a Leander Paes or a Mahesh Bhupati or a Sania Mirza now. It has to be done by people who are now out of the system, who are not dependent on associations anymore. Because if it is a parent of a child, of a promising child, believe you me, that child's career is over.
Okay, so for our listeners, there's an interesting nugget here that 16 players were banned by the Asian Football Confederation in the year 2000, and 8 were banned in the 2010 AFC Under-16 Championships. So this is an international case. In 2018, the Solomon Islands, which originally finished second in the championships, were found by the Oceania Football Confederation to have deliberately fielded overage players. And they were found out. Later, now this is the interesting part, mandatory use of magnetic resonance imaging, or MRI, was introduced in FIFA in 2009, which helped ascertain whether players are overage or not, and were considered 99% accurate until the age of 17. Can India learn something from the use of MRI?
Yeah, I think that's something we can do. But again, how many people can afford to do that? An association, if at all a player is caught, associations have to be penalized. They should be made to pay huge amounts of money to the system, to the All India Tennis Association. And if a certain player from, say, the Karnataka State Lawn Tennis Association or the Tamil Nadu State Lawn Tennis Association was called out for age fraud by another association, it is the parent body, the state association to which the child belongs, has to prove that the age of the child is such, and the test can they can fund those tests. And in case those, then who comes right, then whoever's accused them should pay. So then there won't be so much accusation, and you can, and if the state associations are going to be penalized, then they will take care.
Okay.
Now it is a free for all.
Okay. Quickly hopping on to cricket, Rahul Dravid, who's now, as everyone knows, he's steering the National Cricket Academy. So he mentioned that age fraud leads to an erosion of culture. It leads to a scenario where a lot of talented boys don't get to play when they should actually be playing. It is not only cricket that this kind of fraud is prevalent, but in other sports as well. Now, some good happened because the BCCI took this up quite seriously, and it has set up a 24-hour hotline. This and this helpline resulted in catching at least 75 cases of fake age certificates last year. And independent verification of age certificates is being carried out without involving the state associations. Besides, another rule that needs to be lauded is that a cricketer can play only in one under-19 World Cup. So there's something good happening in cricket.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. You know, as much as with most Olympic disciplines, there is a huge, an anti-cricket wave, if you want to say. They are, without doubt, the best run association in this country. The BCCI, for all that it's been pulled up and shown up for, they have taken stands the rest of Indian sport has failed to do.
I just wanted to ask you that, explain it for our listeners, please, that how does this 24-hour hotline / helpline work, that people who are calling in, so this is basically facilitating the whistleblowers or someone who has information, doesn't want to be identified, and passes on the information? Is that the intent?
It can be parents, because you're not identified. You don't have to say who you are. You can say, I think X player has fudged their age. This is the reasons why. You can't just say A has checked has fudged their age. If you do that, that's not even going to be considered. If you have details, X player for XYZ reasons, and it can be everything from facial hair to height to voice to just everything. Acne. There are n number of things that parents use to detect if their child is being made to play against an older player, or the fact that you have another constant thing that parents do is monitor the age of opponents. If your child has played, which is again it's a very common thing in tennis, if your first child has played against a certain player in the under 12 and your younger child is still playing against that player in the under 12 category, there is something. So there are all those kind of things that parents keep this kind of data, and the whistleblower it's always a person in the system, because it is a person who's impacted by what is happening.
That's very interesting. Now, when it comes to way forward, there are 3 points that I have, and I'll mention the first one and then ask you to come in, Prajwal. The first point is that stricter penalties on state associations or clubs could help curb the menace at the grassroots level. Besides, coaches play a very important role in a junior player's career. Liability must be also fixed on the coaches when such cases come to light. What do you think?
I agree. Because it is, in an individual sport like tennis, the coach is in many ways the association itself, because that is who a child reports to. And if there is a tendency to fudge, I would say to 60 to 70% of that is either the idea is first pushed by the coach and then sealed by the parent, or in a very rare case, it is from the parent and then sealed by the coach. The coach is fully aware, and I don't know whether you can penalize the coach as much as you can mark him out, because how do you prove that it is the coach who is responsible for it?
Yeah, that's a very interesting point.
It's the easiest thing to do for him to wash his hands off. The parent is the one holding the child then, right?
Yeah. So investment in personnel and technology for verification purposes need to be made by national federations on a priority basis. Best practices of helplines can be replicated. So we were just talking about that BCCI helpline. So maybe that can be replicated?
Yes, 100%. I mean, and if every Obviously, the other sports bodies are not as wealthy as the BCCI is. So in which case, it can just be the Indian Olympic Association that has something like this, and where every sport can make their complaints, can, register whatever it is that is bothered. It can be age fraud, it can be more than age, it can be sexual exploitation, it can be anything. Anything that hinders progress of sport should be reported.
Okay, now coming to the last point, and it is the typical last but not the least point, which is that the sports integrity unit of the CBI must be given more powers than just the current assisting powers, which essentially makes it an ineffective toothless body. Also, a relook must be given to the national code for unambiguous directions and stricter penalties. So here we are talking about bringing the CBI into this game.
So I don't know, Arup, for age fraud, whether it's actually a very simple thing, and it really does not need that kind of, that extent of seizing the problem, shall we say. It can start at the word go. It's a little thing. All that players, and you don't have a player who's going on to be a Junior Davis Cup player starting tennis at the age of 15. That's not possible. You would have had to start by 6, 7, 8, and by which 8 is even too much. It's probably be 5 and 6. And at that time, the age registration is right. Every child who registers who plays tennis has to be registered in club or school or academy or wherever. That child has to, and that is the only age that the child can use until he goes out of the juniors and forever. If you have that, it's a simple thing. You don't need to go beyond that. If that can be there too, you don't need to get anybody into this, because it is a small problem. And the important thing is in this to not make a mountain out of a molehill.
And your closing comment would be that this is a matter of intent. There is no other reason why these changes cannot happen. It's just there should be a will.
100%. Without a shadow of a doubt. If we wanted to stop this, we would. We want the results because we want corporates investing in tennis. And if we don't have the results, corporates will not invest in tennis. And if we cannot do the groundwork to actually produce talented players by the age of 14 and 15, give them the push to play the junior Grand Slams, it is because we are not putting in what is needed. We're taking the easy way out. It is slack, it's laziness, and now it's almost criminal.
Thank you very much, Prajwal, for your time. And you spoke very well, and there was a lot of punchy suggestions. And of course, your expertise in tennis came through so beautifully. Thank you very, very much for joining us.
Thanks, Arup. I enjoyed this. Thank you.
And so, guys, you're listening to this podcast on sports999.com. And this is Sports with a Z. Goodbye. See you soon.